Proxemics describes an individual's perception and use of space. It is the branch of knowledge that deals with the amount of space that people feel necessary to set between themselves and others. Also interesting is the fact that it has the same root etymologically as the word proximity, which stands for how close or near somebody is to you or some place is to you. So proxemics stands for space language or the language of space. Hence, it is the study of distance that individuals maintain between each other while interacting. Social scientists who study nonverbal communication have defined four distinct zones as relevant to or in relation to the distance that people maintain with other people. The first zone, that is the nearest to us, is called the intimate distance, which is about 1.5 feet from us. Only people who are very close to us, our best friends, our parents, brothers or sisters, spouses, boyfriends, girlfriends, they can stand to each other at an intimate distance. Nobody else is allowed really. Okay? Because this is very much our own intimate personal space or territory that nobody else can be allowed into. Beyond the intimate zone is the personal zone, which ranges from about 1.5 feet to about 4 feet. We stand from other people maybe at parties or in office or at social gatherings or functions at a personal distance, not a very intimate distance, and not at a very further distance also. So the personal zone is where we do a large part of our talking with people who are acquaintances. Beyond the personal zone is the social zone, uh, ranging from about 4 feet till about 12 feet. Now, this is the zone where we generally interact with people uh, on a social contract. For example, if a plumber or a carpenter comes to visit your house to do some repairs, you generally would have them at a distance more than some 4 feet and somewhere within 12 feet. Okay. Other examples being the postman, now almost extinct, the local shopkeeper, a new employee at work. So anybody whom you do not know too well but are only interacting with in some context of a social interaction or would be in the social zone. The last zone is the public zone. Now anything beyond 12 feet and up to any distance till which you are audible could be called the public zone. So if Narendra Modi speaks to a rally of people standing till about 500 feet from him, that is all his public zone because they all can hear him. If a manager or if of a company talks to employees and they're all standing in one room or one big hall and they're till about 40 or 50 or 80 feet, that is the public zone at that time. So public zone, the outer limit cannot be really defined. So anything beyond 12 feet until where you can be audible or you can be seen would be called the public zone. Chronemics stands for time language or the use of time to convey some message. Now using time can be symbolic in many ways. We see in India very often VIPs turn up late for very important events. Sometimes they're trying to convey that they're very important by coming late. On the other hand, an employee who comes late for a meeting or somebody who's a business person goes late for a meeting for business would be seen as irresponsible or somebody who at least is not very interested in the work or in the business that they're trying to do here. Okay. So in that sense, time and its usage is extremely important in terms of what message it might convey either intentionally or unintentionally. Okay. So you must take care of that in your own interaction with other people. Now, there is one distinction we often make in terms of time culture and using time. It is monochronic versus polychronic work culture in terms of time. Now, guys, if you remember, while we were discussing cross-cultural barriers, I told you that time is perceived very differently in the West versus in the East. Now, if you remember that specific example that I told you, that suppose you're in India and you need to meet somebody and you ask them for a time to meet and they say you can come anytime. they actually mean you can come anytime. Okay. On the other hand, if you're in America and you want to meet somebody and you ask for an appointment, they will tell you a specific time that come at 8 o'clock. Neither 5 minutes or 10 minutes later or earlier, but sharp 8 o'clock. In America, on the other hand, if they tell you come anytime, they actually don't want to meet you and they don't want to give you any time to come and meet. Okay. So guys, that is an idea of the distinction between monochronic and polychronic time. Okay. We often say that people in America and Europe, etc., in the West follow largely monochronic time, in the sense that they generally perform only one activity at a given time. So time is seen as a very important, crucial, rationable entity which should not be wasted at all and which should be used in a very focused manner. Okay. On the other hand, countries like India or Latin America, etc., or in the Arab countries, we generally follow polychronic time, where time is not seen as extremely important. Rather, we want to look at time more in terms of trying to use it to maintain harmonious relationships collectively with people around us. So we generally, people in the polychronic time culture generally do multiple things at the same time, while in monochronic people do one thing at a given time. Okay, just an example, if you go to a doctor in America and you have the appointment for 11 a.m. or 11 a.m., your turn is sharp 11 and it is till 11:15 or 11:30, whatever the time is allotted. On the other hand, if you're in India and you get an appointment for 11 a.m. with a doctor, you might reach at 11:15. Your appointment is still far off. You randomly go inside the clinic finally at 11:45 to ask, doctor, when can I come in for the appointment? Already two people are sitting there. One is standing. So he says, okay, you also please come and sit. So while you're sitting there, it is 12:15. Another guy walks in and says, sir, please tell me what these medicines are and why, when they should be taken. So generally we do not respect time in that sense. Very often people in monochronic time cultures will stick to their plans and schedules much better than people, generally speaking, in polychronic time cultures. So the learning, guys, has to be that we must respect time and use time in the best of manner to be able to convey the right message as and when and where it is required. Moving on to oculesics. Oculesics is the study of the communicative role of the eyes in nonverbal communication, or to say in simpler words, the study of nonverbal communication behavior involving the eyes. As they say, the eyes are the windows to our souls. So in large part, they are very important tools for receiving as well as sending communication messages. One of the very important components of oculesics is eye contact. The amount of eye contact that you maintain with another person or you make with another person can say a lot of things about you. So let us first understand that what are the various purposes or functions for which eye contact can be used. It can be used for saying something or speaking information. If you're angry with somebody, that can be said with a particular kind of eye contact without using words. It can be used for showing attention and interest. If there's a very interesting teacher teaching you in class, or there's a very interesting lecture that you're attending, you will make a proper and adequate amount of eye contact. It can be used for inviting and controlling interaction. So often people can convey with their eyes or eye contact that they want to talk to somebody, or they are controlling the interaction just by maintaining eye contact, maybe in a meeting with different individuals sometimes. It can often be used for domineering, threatening, or influencing others. So eye contact in that angry mode can be especially used for dominating or domineering others. All of us have seen examples of that in Hindi movies and generally everywhere. It can be used for providing feedback during speech. If you are making a speech and the audience is not making proper eye contact, that is feedback that they're not getting what you're saying or they're not interested. On the other hand, if the audience makes very vivacious eye contact, and that is an indication that they're extremely interested in whatever you're saying. Finally, eyes can convey or reveal the attitudes that you have at a given time. For example, if somebody is happy or unhappy or surprised, so they can definitely reveal attitudes as well as emotions. In oculesics, we also define the concept of gaze or gazing behavior, which is the way of looking at somebody. We define different types of gazes, including formal gaze, informal gaze, personal gaze, and a lateral gaze. Formal gaze is the gaze that is the way you look at people. For example, in an interview, if you go for a placement interview and you sit in front of the interviewer, you would look at them with a very formal gaze. Technically, you would define formal gaze as simply looking at the upper part of somebody's face or the forehead including the eyes sometimes. In this picture that you can see, the green triangle on the first person's forehead symbolizes formal gaze. If that is your interviewer and you look at them typically on this area of the face, that would be a formal gaze. The second picture depicts informal gaze. When you meet your colleagues at work or your classmates, some of them you may not know too well, so you look at the entire face, the second triangle on the face. That is an example of informal gaze. That is the concept of informal gaze. The third type is the personal gaze. For example, with your friends, when you meet your friends, you don't really care what part of the face you're looking at. You might look at their entire body and just keep talking. So that would be called a personal gaze. The last kind of gaze is the lateral gaze. Not very well used in professional communication. You probably see it more when the hero and the heroine are dancing around the trees in Bollywood movies and they look sideways to each other. That is of course tongue in cheek, but by and large, when people look sideways towards each other, that would be called lateral gaze. We next move to paralinguistics, also called vocalics, which includes primarily non-word characteristics of spoken language. It includes characteristics such as speaking speed, volume, pitch, the pauses you take, the rhythm of speaking, the quality and voice modulation. So the idea is, guys, whenever we speak, the meaning in the words is verbal communication. That is what is being said. There is also meaning in how something is being said. That meaning is in nonverbal communication. For example, the same word said at a higher volume or a higher pitch can indicate some sort of an emotion like anger or emphasizing something. For example, if a boss says to his subordinate, "I want this report today," there is no emphasis on any word. So it means that I want the report today. On the other hand, if the boss says, "I want this report today," now when today here is in the higher pitch and tone, the emphasis is on this word today. So probably the meaning, the hidden meaning that the boss also implies is that, hey, you generally do things late, so I want you to be on time this time. And don't be late, I want the report today. Good speakers often pay a lot of emphasis on paralinguistics or vocalics. They try to vary their speed of speaking or the volume, the pitch, take pauses sometimes, vary the rhythm of speaking, try and modulate their voice. So all of these things are extremely essential parts of good spoken communication. So the takeaway has to be that as a good speaker, you need to focus on your vocalics, on your paralanguage, try and practice voice modulation or taking pauses to be a more effective speaker and to be able to connect more effectively with your audience. Any audience, any day, loves a speaker who can vary their pitch and tone and modulation as compared to somebody who only talks in monotones. Let us now examine some aspects of paralinguistics which can be useful for understanding how well we speak and becoming better speakers. We begin with pitch variation. So monotonous speech will generally fail to keep listeners' attention. If there is no pitch variation, people would get bored very soon. On the other hand, if you keep varying your pitch, take it high sometimes, come low sometimes, that kind of makes it more interesting and keeps the listener more engaged. Secondly, one more thing to note about pitch variation is that people in authority often speak in a high pitched tone because authority gives them this a sense that they should speak in a high pitched tone, and the message is that because I'm an extremely important person and I have this authority, I can generally speak in with a high pitch. Think of a school or a college principal. They would deliberately and intentionally try and keep a high pitch to have that effect on the audience. Think of politicians. They generally talk a lot of rhetoric, and large part of that is at a very high pitch. Similarly, when somebody is excited, they tend to speak in a high pitched tone. Now let's talk about the speed at which we speak. When people are excited or in a state of anxiety, they generally speak faster, and when they are relaxed, they speak at a comfortable speed. Therefore, the speaking speed also is an extremely important parameter in paralinguistics. However, we must understand that fluency in speaking is not the same thing as speed of speaking. Very often, when we increase our speed a lot, fluency reduces. Okay. The one lesson that we can learn as speakers in terms of speaking speed is that we can try and speak the easier parts at a faster speed, while the difficult or the more complicated parts of the message can be spoken at a slower pace or a slower speed. That would be hugely beneficial for the audience. Now let's talk of volume variation. The loudness of our voice should be adjusted according to the size of the audience, which is extremely obvious. Sometimes, however, people believe that the only way to sound convincing or to prove that they have a better argument is to speak louder, which is an extremely wrong conception. In paralinguistics, the major importance of volume variation would be to stress a word when the emphasis is required with a higher volume. As we discussed earlier, if the boss focuses on today with a higher volume, they are emphasizing some importance in that word. Haptics, as a component of nonverbal communication, indicates the use of touch to convey a message. Now, touch guys can convey multiple messages in many ways. In India, we have this ancient tradition of touching elders' feet, which denotes respect. All of us have heard about good touch and bad touch. So in many ways, touch can denote a lot of different types of messages, including, for example, attention, affection towards somebody, greeting somebody, departures, or support. So touch can mean multiple things. However, we must understand that at the professional workplace, touch must be used properly, and then it can create feelings of positivity, warmth, and trust. While when it is used improperly, it can cause annoyance and mistrust. The last aspect of nonverbal communication that we discuss is artifacts, which primarily stands for the use of objects to communicate something. For example, people often want to buy an iPhone because it makes a statement, because they want to convey a message to some people. Somebody wants to buy a BMW, black color, because black makes a statement and BMW makes a statement too. So objects can be often seen as artifacts or entities to convey messages in some way. The branch of artifacts also includes a person's dress, their shoes, and their appearance in general, and how well they are groomed. Now, these things, guys, are the visual aspects of a person's personality. They're extremely important to also be seen as a part of nonverbal communication because of the simple reason that all these visual aspects of one's personality, such as our dressing sense, our shoes, our way of keeping ourselves, the way we dress up our hair, all of those things are extremely important in a professional environment. For example, consider that you have a startup or you work in a company and you go to a meeting with a client. Now, if you're interested in getting this business from the client, you'll be very neatly and tidily dressed. You'll comb your hair properly. You'll be very well groomed. On the other hand, if somebody goes to that meeting and they're largely unkempt and looking very untidy, it would appear the message that would come out from their personality and the visual aspect would be that they're not interested in this business really. So in that sense, guys, artifacts are extremely important also as a nonverbal communication. So that brings us to the end of nonverbal communication. Again, for any doubts or any questions, please feel free to call me or WhatsApp or email, and I'm always there. See you there.